Senator Lindsey Graham. All right, you've been saying it. Ted Cruz has been saying it. Senator Kennedy's been saying it. And Senator Rand Paul's been saying it. And I credit all of you. Why? Let's start with the basics. Why, please tell me, in the name of Jesus in heaven, why would we give China and their Wuhan lab of virology one single solitary penny? Let's start there.
Well, number one, it seems to me China's got a lot of money. They can pay for their own research. But the most stunning thing out of your monologue to me was the idea that Dr. Fauci doesn't believe that it's in China's interest to lie about the leak from their lab. The person from NBC asked him, isn't it in their interest to lie to the world and not admit it came from their lab because that'd make them look terrible? If you can't figure that out, then you've got a real problem on your hand. Candor and openness and transparency do not go in the same sentence when it comes to China. So what to do? Call Dr. Fauci before the Senate and the House. Allow the people in the State Department who were silenced about pushing the lab leak theory to have their say. Hold those responsible who shut down this conversation. Make sure they're fired and get to the bottom of what happened. And finally, introduce sanctions, bipartisan, against China if they don't cooperate with the international community. They will never tell you the truth until they're made to do so.
He was told January 31st, 10 days after the first identified case of corona in the U.S. He was told that by the day that Donald Trump put in place that xenophobic, hysterical travel ban that probably saved countless hundreds of thousands of lives, the one that Joe called xenophobic, hysterical, and all that. 10 days in, he was told it looks engineered, that the sequence of the virus show every indication that, in fact, this gain of function had happened. 10 days in. Now, the question is...
This is why we need...
Go ahead.
Okay. This is why we need to call Dr. Fauci before the... Doesn't this remind you a little bit about the dossier?
Yeah,
a lot. They knew it was bad, and they kept... Why? Okay, they knew it was bad, but they had an outcome they wanted, which was to blame Trump, right? Well, they shut down the idea that it could have come from the lab because the Chinese scientists will never admit to that because it makes them look incompetent. And the American scientists who have a working relationship with the Chinese scientists, it would make them look incompetent. We need somebody outside the science world to get to the bottom of this, and I think this is a job for Congress.
Senator, we now have evidence. First, we played this tape many times, Joe Biden, 3 separate occasions. Yeah. I never talked to my son Hunter about his foreign business dealings, not one time, never. Now we've got pictures of Joe in restaurants with oligarchs from Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Russia, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Does America now have to worry that the Chinese have compromising material on the Biden family? Because in my view, there's no rational reason that the president would give a waiver for Putin to build his pipeline while taking away American jobs and American energy independence. On the other hand, it doesn't make any sense why Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan and Chase, that they didn't get the $1.5 billion deal with the Bank of China, that Hunter got it, the crack addict. So you explain to me, do we have to worry about this administration compromise? Because if it was Donald Trump as president, that would be the narrative every single second hour of every 24-hour day.
Absolutely, Sean, because you have irrational business relationships. Why would a bank in China give Hunter Biden money except for the fact that he has connections to Vice President Biden? Why is he on Burisma's board in the Ukraine if he doesn't know anything about the oil and gas business because of his last name and the fact that Vice President Biden was in charge of rooting out corruption in the Ukraine? It defies common sense that these are normal business deals. Is it illogical to think that somehow, due to his activity in the Ukraine and China, he may have been compromised? I can guarantee you if a Republican president's son had done this, or a Republican vice president's son had done these things, it'd be front page news all over the world. And you ask a good question. Has he been compromised? What explains allowing Russia to build a pipeline and you shut one down in your own country? How does that make sense?
Well, it doesn't. You just got back from Israel, real quick, a summary, because I see nothing but an unmitigated disaster. A weak American president and no Bibi on the world stage.
Yeah. Well, Bibi, don't count him out, but no matter what happens, the right, the middle, and the left in Israel, they're very worried about the Iran nuclear deal. They hate the JCPOA. And here's what Biden is doing. He's going to create a nuclear arms race if we go back into the Iran agreement, because the Arabs are going to want their own enrichment capability, and then we'll have a nuclear arms race. Secondly, Israel will not tolerate an enrichment program in Iran. We're headed for a war between Israel and Iran. If we go back in the JCPOA, we're going to have a nuclear arms race between the Arabs and the Iranians, and you're going to put Israel in a bad spot where you'll have a war between Iran and Israel if we go back into this bad deal. And I heard that from everybody in Israel, not just Bibi.
All right, Senator, great to see you. Thank you.